Mole conversions, mass to mole, and mole to mass. You should observe that we have been using these top 4 conversion factors in the first set of notes, where we converted between moles and atoms, or moles and molecules, or moles and formula units, or moles and particles. All 4 of these conversion factors have 1 mole and 6022 times 10 to the 23rd, either atoms, molecules, formulas, or particles. We will now go into moles to grams. So 1 mole equals X grams. The X here is in a set of parentheses because it represents a variety of numbers. It has to be calculated over to the side or just on your calculator, and it is the molar mass. So the molar mass is the periodic table number, another way that I like to say that. So you'll have to calculate the molar mass to know what the value of X is. Notice, please, this is extremely important, that we do not put a unit of grams after the 602 to the 23rd number. So grams does not come as a unit after 602 to the 23rd in a conversion factor. You have to calculate the value that goes with the word grams in the conversion factor. Another way to look at the units that makes it a little bit more simplistic is to look at it like this. Here we have 1 mole equals 6022 times 10 to the 23rd atoms, molecules, formulas, or particles. We'll only use one of these each time when we work on using this, or when we use this as a conversion factor. 1 mole equals X grams. Okay, so let's go through some examples. I'm going to do 2 examples, one going each direction, and then you will have 2 to practice. Please take out a periodic table, something to take some notes on, and something to write with. You also need a calculator. So calculator, periodic table, something to write with, and something to write on. Okay, example 5. What is the mass of 6.300 moles of hydrogen? All right, we're going to start with our number, our unit, and a formula in the top grid. Let me get everything set up here on my end. Hopefully this will work. So we're going to start with So we're going to start with 6.300 moles of H2. So just like we started the other problems, we're going to start with our numeric, our number, our unit, and our chemical formula in the top of the first box. So that's where we got that from. Now, we know in all of these grids, we always have to put the same unit, and now we also have to put the same formula that we have in the opposite but top of the box before, so that units cancel. Now, we know that we're going from moles to mass, so using the 1 mole equals 602 to the 23rd number will not work, because remember, we can't put mass after 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd. We will use this conversion factor. So we will put a 1 here, and then we know 1 mole of H2 equals so many grams of H2. Now, this is where the X comes in. We won't put X there, of course. We're going to have to calculate the mass. So over here to the side, we're going to, or just in your calculator, you do not need to show this part. You are going to calculate the molar mass for hydrogen. So it's going to be H2, so that's, list the atoms. I have hydrogens, I have 2 of them. The number off the periodic table is 101, so the molar mass here is 202. So then we're going to put 2.02 grams here. And now moles of H2 cancel with moles of H2. The only unit we have left is grams of H2, so we're ready to calculate. We're going to go ahead and do that. So what do we do when we calculate? Remember, we multiply numbers across the top, we multiply numbers across the bottom, and divide. Let me kind of just tell you out loud what I'm doing on my calculator so you kind of get a feel. It's always good to see if you can get my answer on your calculator, making sure you understand how to do this correctly. So I'm going to type in 6.300, and then I'm going to multiply times 2.02 and multiply numbers across the top. Of course, I'm not going to divide by 1 because I don't need to do that. Oops, something happened on my calculator. Let me try that again. And I get 12.726. We got to use sig figs. Please be careful. Please pay careful attention to directions, especially in Schoology. With the limitations of Schoology, you may need to round differently than sig figs, but for calculations other than when told to, we will apply sig figs. So always pay attention to the directions for how I want your answer. Notice that I have 4 sig figs here. I have 3 sig figs here. This was a number that was at some point decided when we were going to cut the number off. This number was cut off at some point. So because those numbers were what we would call rounded numbers or measurements, then we will allow that to be our guide for sig figs. This would be considered, we won't use these in our sig figs, otherwise everything would be 1. So we're going to consider this exact. So this would be the two numbers we do. And we're going to say 4 sig figs and 3 sig figs. Remember, decimal present, go this way, 1, 2, 3. Decimal present, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 3 is smaller than 4, so my answer can only have 2 sig figs. And I will get 12.7 grams of H2. And that is my final answer. Remember, the requirement for these problems is a number, a unit, and a formula everywhere. A number, unit, formula, number, unit, formula, number, unit, formula. Let me make my 7 a little bit better there. Okay, take a moment to pause the video and check to see if you can numerically get the same value on your calculator. Okay, next example. So this time, again, we're going to start with what we're given. So 87.1 grams of calcium phosphate. Now, we know that in these grids or in these train tracks, I've heard people refer to them as, whatever we have unit and chemical wise in the top box, the next box has to have the same unit and chemical formula. Okay, so we're going to figure out that, and we know that if we have grams of something, the top will be 1 mole of that something as a conversion factor. So if we're using a conversion factor with grams, we know one box has to be grams of that chemical, the other box has to be 1 mole of that chemical. Okay, so we got to calculate the X value here. So we're going to go over to the side here, and I'm going to think about the fact that I have 3 calciums, I have 2 phosphorus, and I have 8 oxygens. The molar mass periodic table number is 40.08 for calcium, and phosphorus 30, let me look at, I don't know that one by heart, 30.97, I was close. And oxygen is 16.00, so we count each number of atoms in the formula, and then we're going to multiply across. So 40.08 times 3 is 120.24, 120.24, and 30.97 times 2 is 61.94, and 8 times 16 is 128.00. Remember that we said our rules for molar masses will be always to round every answer to 2 places past the decimal. So 120 plus 61.94 plus 128.0 gives me 310. 310.18. That's what'll go with the X, so 310.18. Remember, 2 places past the decimal every time for molar mass. So now we're going to do the math. Remember, the requirement is you have to have number, unit, formula, number, unit, formula, number, unit, formula. Notice that grams of calcium phosphate cancel, leaving us only moles, and that's what we're looking for, moles of calcium phosphate. So we can now do the math. We're going to multiply numbers across the top. Pardon me. So 87.1 times 1, I wouldn't do that on my calculator, but feel free if you need to. Then divide by numbers on the bottom. So I punched in 87.1, divide by 310.18, and my answer on my calculator is going to be 0.28080464. And then sig fig rules say there's 3 sig figs here and 5 here. We won't count this, so I can only have 3 sig figs, so 0.281 moles of calcium phosphate would be our final answer. Please pause the video and make sure that you get this answer on your calculator on your own. Okay, so now I'd like you to try one of these on your own based on of the 4, which is your favorite color. Pause the video and then do the problem, then check your answer. Did you get it right, or at least close, meaning that it should be somewhere a number in the thousands? Okay, if you didn't get the right answer, look over your work. If you cannot figure out what you did wrong, then I would suggest you email me or get on a conference call. Try one of these, please, based on your favorite season of the year. What I would suggest to you is if you don't get the right answer after pausing this video and checking the answer and you don't get it correctly, one of the things that I would recommend you might always do before you assume the worst is double check your molar masses. Very often, my students mess these problems up because they've miscalculated the molar mass. So double, triple, quadruple check maybe the molar mass. Pause the video. After trying this problem, come back and see how you did. Did you get it right? If not, I would look over to see if you can figure out why you got it wrong. If you cannot figure out why you got it wrong, please reach out to me via email or a conference.